We are calling this meeting to order at 6:02. Get our clock.
Yeah, Evan was supposed to fix that. I don't know what happened there.
Good evening, this is I think it's now a work session of the Planning Commission, Village Planning Commission. The chair, David Natisco, is not here tonight, so I am taking over.
Caitlin may not make it either.
Caitlin may not make it over.
She emailed and said she would try to make it, but she may not make it.
Any, well, I guess we have to do an audience for visitors first. We only have one, our distinguished unified manager. Is there any statement you'd like to make at this time?
No, I'm just evaluating you as a chairman pro tem.
Awesome.
No, I'm
No
just,
pressure.
no, I'm just stopping in to see the presentation, and I have a select board meeting tonight, so.
Thank you. Robin, any additions or amendments to the agenda tonight?
No, John, just the fact that two people can't make it. That's all.
I'm hoping everyone has a chance to read those. And does anybody have any comments or corrections or comments?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any
Second, third.
further discussion?
I have a question as to memory here when it comes to the asphalt shingles. Did he indeed say that there's asphalt shingles in the building now?
Yes.
He did? Okay.
Anything else? All those in favor of the motion to approve as presented?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. All right, so we're on to the comprehensive plan updates. And we have Melanie here tonight, and I think we're talking about energy again. Not
We are not talking about energy tonight.
Oh, awesome.
That is for next meeting.
Okay,
Read your poster.
Okay, well, when are we?
That poster.
Who invited
It
him?
says, it shouldn't say energy for
It doesn't.
February
It
25th.
doesn't. It doesn't. John's still learning the reading part of it.
We'll get you a Braille version next time.
Yeah.
Are we? having
energy
a-
is March 21st.
Are we
Good
having a
job.
discussion with the Essex Town Planning Commission on this joint article on that day? So it's not in the works, we're on our own, or what?
Well, we're on our own tonight. But they're
Well-
going to warn a meeting for that.
Specifically for the energy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think it works well for this process because we are planning on talking about the enhanced energy plan on March 21st as well. And so we just, I think, maybe need to be a little bit cognizant of time at the next March
Right.
21st meeting. So, you know, if it's a joint meeting, maybe we talk about energy first and then save some time at the end to talk about the other section of the comprehensive. A longer meeting, I don't know.
Adopted, is that correct? By the
Yeah.
town and the village?
Yes.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just our village comprehensive plan update, which we've all been tracking for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's a comprehensive plan light, as I deemed it, because we're upgrading ours to get to the point where we can merge the two, and the town's ready to do that. So we're really just meeting all the requirements of the state and the regional planning commission.
Correct. All right,
Okay.
take it away.
All right, so I'm here to talk to you about the updates, and the scope and the schedule to have this done. So as Robin indicated, the scope of work that, CCRPC is, contracted to do with the village includes updating, doing a light comprehensive plan update to be in compliance with state statutes. Since the plan was last adopted, the village needs to comply with flood resiliency standards, so that involves updating the language to reference river corridors. We'll go over that in more detail. referencing the tactical basin plans that the Department of Environmental Conservation have developed for the Winooski Basin and the Northern Lake Champlain Basin, integrating the work that Du Bois and King has done on Five Corners design and the parking study, so that'll be integrated in the land use and transportation sections that we'll talk about at the March 21st meeting. One of the other requirements for doing an update to a comprehensive plan is to make sure that the data reflects existing conditions. So, to the best of our ability and within this time frame, we'll be updating data sourced from the American Community Survey, the Vermont Department of Labor, other data statistics that we can get from the village. All the maps have also been updated. I hope you guys got a chance to look at those.
No maps.
We didn't
Nope,
get it.
you didn't get the maps, okay. Those are on the CCRPC FTP site, so,
You have to go there.
I can send you that link this evening, or we can, and if you want, we can also stop, at some point and we can take a look at the maps on the screen, so long as I can get on Wi-Fi. We can look at the maps that are relevant to the sections that we're talking about, if that's helpful. Also integrating the enhanced energy planning work that we've been doing with both the village and the town going forward. And the purpose of the plan update to be kind of plan update light is, our understanding is that the intent is at some point for the village and the town to consider becoming, working together to do one town plan.
Right.
And just although we're focused on natural resources and flood resiliency and land use and transportation, there is other information in the plan that is out of date. So for example, there's information in there about the farmer's market, and like that was started in 2013, and how many vendors there are. And unfortunately, I'm not in.
Expanded.
Yeah, there's zero.
Right. So I'm not a village resident. So there's those kinds of things that are threaded throughout the plan that I don't have answers to and don't know how to update them or remove them. And so we should talk about how to get that information updated, and if that's something that the Planning Commission wants to get updated. Maybe it's me going through the plan and identifying these areas and sending it you to update, or we identify one person on the Planning Commission to look for these sort of contextual descriptions of very specific village activities. Did you already do it?
I was gonna say, I don't know about everybody else, but I was planning on going back through and rereading the entire thing, and I have comments and
Okay.
circled, stuff, so,
Yeah.
which I'm sure I
Oh,
know
yeah.
Diane would too,
Okay.
so.
All right, so I think that's a good plan going forward, so I'll look to you guys to have that information updated, and then, we just need to be cognizant of time, and our schedule to make sure that it's done by when we need it to be done by.
Yeah, so I think the logistical question is, I can't remember how we did it the last time, where, with like typos and all that stuff.
Oh,
whether it
I
was-
handed Terry my book and she got most of them.
Okay, all right, so is that how we should do it, send it to Terry?
Yeah.
Okay, just gonna love it.
Who's actually in charge of the document? Is it CCRPC or is it our own staff? Physically typing and changing and making corrections and issuing?
It'll be mostly CCRPC.
Yeah.
Okay. So you may want to hand your book to
I
someone.
may can hand it to her, yeah, because
Yeah.
I won't make the next meeting, because I'm out of town.
Okay,
So
so,
you can hang on to this and get it back to me.
okay. I can do that. We'll talk after the meeting about the logistics. And so the reason why we're doing this comprehensive, or the update to the comprehensive plan is because the plan expires in August 2019. So CCRPC is here to help you guys that. We have 120 hours of technical assistance. So, we're under a tight schedule and, and resources to get this done. So we need to be very focused to meet what we are required to do to get the plan updated.
And then we've mapped out our schedule so that we can have it approved by ourselves and then on to the
it's on the,
trustees. It's all in there, right?
Yeah.
Good.
So, yep, that brings me to the next slide. So, January, I can take you through the progression so far. So, Robin met with CCRPC staff on January 10th to identify the scope, which is what informed what I just talked to you about. You've seen the first draft that was provided to you last week. We're talking about the first draft tonight. The second draft will be due to you a week before your March 21st meeting. At that meeting, we'll talk about land use, transportation, and energy. The third draft is due to the Planning Commission April 11th, which is a week before the April 18th meeting. And at that point, the Planning Commission will consider warning the hearing. So we have 2 months to do the work. And then the public hearing on the final draft will be on May 23rd. And then there's a subsequent meeting on June 6th where the Planning Commission will vote to send the plan to the trustees. The trustees they will receive their plan on June 11th and warn the hearing. And then their first hearing is July 23rd. And then their second and final public hearing is August 13th. And between the public hearing, the first public hearing and the second and final public hearing, if there's substantial changes made to the plan, another hearing will have to be re-warned. And we've made some accommodations to make sure, that will work out and the plan is readopted by August 26, 2019. So I just wanted to give you a sense of really how compressed and focused we need to be on updating this plan. Any questions, comments?
Can you send us that
Yeah.
so we can
I think we
make
saw it,
sure we
didn't we?
can plan
Yeah,
our
it's
I
schedule?
swear we
already
saw
have
it.
it.
Yeah, I don't know where.
I'll send it again.
So I guess this is probably the best time to ask this question. I'm assuming, and as I was reading through this, I think this is my second time I've done this. I was looking at, also, I quickly browsed at the towns and South Burlington as well, and I just thought theirs were, I think I made this comment the last time, they were easier to read, had a lot of pictures, those kinds of things, and so I'm guessing that because this is light, we really have a small time frame that we really can't put too much jazz into this, for lack of a better word.
No. However, you can consider doing that after the plan is adopted in August.
Okay.
You can make insertions after you approve the
Well,
document?
no, I mean, in terms of, I don't know, maybe making it more readable. If the content is the same, you can think about making it more readable.
Yeah.
I wasn't talking
Well,
about changing the content. just-
Yeah, it's gonna be, I'm gonna suggest that that's not possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only because,
We're stuck with
we
the
have
contract.
150 pages of written stuff that will never look like the town's plan, which, when they did it, it's a third size, but it seems to have all the information
Yeah.
to satisfy everybody that it needed to. So to go from this type of document to that type of document isn't an easy task. It
Yeah.
really takes a lot of effort. And since we're doing, we're on, I mean, this may be, this may sound strange, but this could be the last one of these,
Mhm.
right? Because the goal is that the next time it's
Joint?
a joint one,
Right.
so I don't know that we gain a whole lot out of doing that. I hate to say it, cause I think our opportunity for that was last time and not this time.
No, I totally understand. I think it's just, I'm reading through this and I'm like, if I can't even understand this, I don't know how, you know, we talk a lot about getting input from public, but if they can't understand it, if I can't understand it, then, you know, and so I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I get it, and I just wanted to mention it as something that, you know, as I'm reading through this, I'm like, especially the river corridor sections and stuff, and I know that's not like the most entertaining stuff, unless that's your passion, but just trying to kind of bring it down to a level where it's understandable for lay folks.
So
And
just out of curiosity, if the items that we are sort of required to include because they're either updated or changed, statistics or background data or floodplain stuff, or, you know, is that like 50% of it, and what we actually want to say about our community is the other 50, or is it, how does that sugar out, do you know?
In terms of the time that we have to spend on this, I mean,
Well,
No, the content.
I mean, it's not like we're gonna, I mean, is it, you know, let's say we're doing the river corridor stuff, is that like we just take a section that's been developed by others, cause we're not really writing it, and we just make a new chapter for that, or does it weave itself all into the?
it's
different things?
part of the open space and natural resources chapter, so it's referenced in terms of, you know, water quality and stormwater management.
And the, let's say the, heart and soul values that we come up with that also
That is remaining.
cross-reference open space and green and so forth, they get married in here?
I mean, I had focused my attention on the hard because I was under the impression that that content was remaining as is. I can take another look at that piece. I know that there is an environment piece to it. And, you know, if there are references to, you know, water quality or fluvial erosion hazard areas, so like river corridors
It's
are
not gonna
very
be that-
technical. It's not
yeah,
gonna be that
It's not gonna be,
specific,
but
right?
it might suggest what's important to us, and somehow that needs to come out in the written form, so that, I mean, the idea is that when people wanna see what they're supposed to do within our village as they try and develop or whatever, as a reference piece, it should set the tone and the overall picture for what we want.
Yeah.
And then, the land development code finding the details. So I'm just saying that, I mean, I thought the way it, the heart and soul information, which really is grassroots coming out of this community, was incorporated last time, was not as completely incorporated as, let's say, it got into the town's version. So if we have a chance to do that this time around, then it's not, you know, a total rewrite with pictures and everything else. We should still work our way toward that. That's my thought. All right, so why don't we let you keep going? 'cause
Okay.
we're-
I heard what you said, so let's see how much progress we make today, and maybe next meeting, and, you know, the amount of substantial changes that we have to make to meet statute, and we can consider that, maybe, you know, at the end, once we get through the required.
I guess what I'm feeling is that we have all these requirements that we have to do, and at the end of the day, that leaves us with only whatever is left to incorporate what we want to do. And
Yeah,
and
no,
I don't want
I
it to be that way.
understand
I
that.
want that, if you tell me it's a requirement, I'm not even gonna, you know, what am I supposed to say about it, except, okay, put it in. So I don't need to spend a lot of time on that. I wanna spend my time
Okay.
on the stuff that's really germane to the way this community feels about the, right? Does that make sense?
It does,
Okay,
yeah.
good. All right, carry on.
Okay, so just, wanting to go over the public meeting schedule. You guys have already seen this. Going forward, we may have to make another poster because the village trustees meetings are not on this public meeting poster, but it was intended to be a poster of the planning commission. So we
Is this posted anywhere? If I may?
Everywhere.
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 Like
So
that little
McDonald's?
bulletin board that's under glass, right by the corner of my
Yeah,
phone's
it's
been there?
also on the Nest, it's also on Firebird, and a few other places.
So
It's on
where
the
you
website.
frequent.
And I posted at the front porch forum today.
It's in Design Five Corners as well.
I saw it on Facebook.
So I put this slide in here just as background, just to give you some background information about what happens if your plan does expire. The hope is that we're not going to get there, but just so that everybody is aware, having an adopted comprehensive plan allows you to adopt zoning, subdivision, and flood hazard regulations. Act 250 applications must conform to your town plan. Your town plan will be considered in 248, in the 248 process. It makes it more competitive for grant applications. Also, there's a few requirements that the Regional Planning Commission has to do for confirming a comprehensive plan. So if a plan is expired and your village designation needs to be re-upped, that can't happen if you have an expired plan. You are not allowed to apply for municipal planning grants if your plan is expired. Levy impact fees, which I don't believe the village does that, and requires state agencies to consider local plan in their planning. So if the plan is expired, the state agencies wouldn't look at your plan. Now we can go into the content of the plan itself. Does everybody have a version, the marked up version? Okay, would it be helpful to put it up on the screen as well?
It'd be helpful to see the maps.
You wanna see the maps?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can go up, we can certainly do that.
And you're telling us this is all required anyway? These particular sections, so if we understand the sections and we see the map, that should be plenty.
Yes. Um,
No,
Okay. Yeah, looks good? Okay. Okay, so chapter 4 was really the focus of these updates. It's where I have worked in references to the river corridor. So previously, if you look at the town plan, we can start with on page 38. This is where we have added in references to the DEC's Winooski's River and Northern Lake Champlain Direct Tactical Basin Plans. I can put up a link later that links you to DEC's website on these plans. Essentially, they are plans which measure and assess water quality in the rivers, in the Winooski River, and other rivers that drain to Lake Champlain, and provide strategy for maintaining and enhancing water quality in the village. There's a little bit of back and forth in the plan in terms of, introducing the tactical basin plan on page 38 and then talking about how it integrates with the village's current stormwater functions. So essentially, because the village is an MS4 town and has a wastewater treatment program and a stormwater management program, many of the strategies that are talked about in the tactical basin plan are being implemented by those programs. However, I have added language in the plan that encourages the village to read those plans and include strategies that they may not already be implementing. So the utilities and facilities section does relate back to the natural resources section. So what I was just referring to is on page 53, review the Winooski River Basin and Northern Lake Champlain Direct Tactical Basin Plan to identify any additional implementation actions necessary to reduce stormwater pollutants and volumes. So that's page 53, yes. On my document. My document may have been printed differently than your
Yeah, I
document.
think it changed
So it's
all the
section
numbers at the
6.12.
Yep. So Melanie, you got a comment here on page 53, it says, has this been completed?
Yeah, so this is like some of the things that I was referring to, very specific activities in the junction that I may not be completely current on. So that is about implementing stormwater discharge standards to be included in the land development code. And I looked at the land development code and there are stormwater best practices, maybe that's not the
Pretty good
best.
on it.
Say that again?
I think it's pretty good on that.
Okay, so then, that's an area where we could probably remove objective 1.9, Robin, if it says implement stormwater discharge standards to be included in the land development code revisions.
Yeah, because they're pretty good.
Okay, so I will mark that,
So you just made sure of that.
okay. Remove, okay. And then, so the other addition is review the Indian Brook and Sunderland Brook flow restoration plans to identify, potential projects and measures to be implemented to meet flow restoration targets by December 5th, 2032. So those are, again, required to be referenced in the plan.
Are they considered impaired waterways still? Do we still have any designated impaired
Yeah,
waterways?
we have one.
Indian?
No.
Something.
I think it's,
Do we have to address that in any special way?
Well, it's been getting better and better. It's pretty close to not being impaired anymore. Jim Jukes was working on stuff all the time.
Yeah, and the flow restoration plan is a very comprehensive scientific document that talks about the status of these waterways. So it's more efficient to reference it from the comprehensive plan than to, take the language out of that and put it in here. The village is not responsible for updating those plans, DEC is, so it's a better use of, time and resources to refer to those plans. They're very specific. They have some great information. Definitely not light reading though. Okay, so that is the addition that we made related to DEC's plans. Another addition is about river corridors. So that starts on page 40. Previously, in the 2014 comprehensive plan, the village was using the fluvial erosion hazard area language. At that time, that was the standard that the state was providing. That has since changed. And the state is requiring municipalities to no longer use the FEH language, instead to use river corridors. And essentially, does this matter? River corridor, but it's the area that could potentially be eroded in the event of a flood event. And there's, really good description about what a river corridor is in the plan. It's the area where a river or stream naturally moves to establish equilibrium, plus adjacent land to provide wiggle room for the river's movement. River corridors are a relatively new term, and protection of these areas is not required by the state, but is strongly encouraged and incentivized through the state's Emergency Relief Assistance Fund. And also A&R regulates Act 250 development to the river corridor. And so in terms of Emergency Assistance Fund, currently the village has status for receiving the most match. At some point, the state is going to, retire that status. And so this discussion about river corridors and, adopting an overlay or incorporating it into your zoning is what is needed to maintain that high incentive match rate. Currently, Essex Junction has regulations for the flood hazard area, but it doesn't have regulations to protect the river corridor. So there's, in the objective section, I've added language that stating land development regulations. So if you flip to page 40, if that's not your page number, it's objective 6.7. It's a new addition. Consider adopting a river corridor overlay, which includes the mapped river corridor and small streams with a drainage area of a half square mile to maintain the natural function of waterways and protect public property. And so just give you a sense of what that looks like on a map, I can pull those up.
Now, Melanie, when I was looking at this,
Mhm.
if I took every sentence as being an objective, we really only have 6.6 because it's cost.
Okay. Yep. To make that change.
So, when you include in your text, consider doing this, how come we're not doing this? I mean, shouldn't we just do this? What are you really trying to tell us here? Is that a statement to
Are
us,
some of these
or is
notes
that?
for you? Are they notes to yourself, some of these notes at the start?
No, that's an objective.
No, these notes,
Well, I think wouldn't adopting the
Yeah.
river corridor overlay, wouldn't that mean updating the LDC?
yes,
And that's,
that's correct.
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
a different,
the different enchilada.
But I think it should be in there so we do it in the
Yeah.
LDC.
Yeah, consider adopting, I don't think we can,
Right.
consider is consider. When is our next, we just did the LDC, but we can make changes.
We can make we did that before. We can.
so, I guess I don't know why I wanna read, like, if I'm reading this final document, I don't wanna read it and have it say, consider doing something. I think it ought to be
Tell you?
somehow, well, I think it ought to trigger us going to a list of stuff that we wanna adopt as updates to the LDC that aren't gonna wait 5 years. We gotta do them.
Okay.
So we should do them, we should have this list of things that
So
need to be
implement.
updated in the
Yes.
LDC in order to comply with what we're saying in the comprehensive plan, even if they're just technicalities, right?
I agree with your saying, with saying, and, the language as proposed, at this point, it's kind of soft. I mean, we can strengthen that language so that it's more of an action. So we can change it to say, just adopt a river corridor overlay in the land development code.
I'm still struggling, because when we, I mean, who's using this comprehensive plan, right? What's the goal behind this comprehensive plan?
It's supposed to
It's
remind
to
us
say we
what
have
to
a
do.
town, or a village plan, right?
Right, but it's also supposed to remind us of a work plan for the LDC,
Mhm.
okay, and for what we're envisioning for the community. So, it's a big, you're right.
So you can leave sort of suggestions in it that say you should do this, I guess, or do this, I'm thinking somehow those are the right words.
Well, what word would you use if adopt or implement is not strong enough?
See the LDC for the latest.
Yeah, often, they're never in unison, one's ahead of the other, depending on which was done last.
That's fine, I'm just saying, tell them there's another piece out there and it needs to be looked at, and it's in the other companion manual. And if you don't actually name it, but you say it's the latest, then it gives us leeway to actually adopt a new one, but it doesn't have some wishy-washy language in there about maybe we should do this, or, you know what I mean? It's, I
John,
don't,
if we say adopt, it means we're gonna have to do it. Okay, consider means maybe to think about it. In this case, if we say adopt, it means we will do it, because the land development
I
code
think
has to be
that's all right.
updated in a year anyhow.
Well, I guess you could say consider it, and then when you consider it, decide.
consider it. I don't want to be forceful. I'm just trying to figure out the tie, you know.
I think
When
we-
I read these two together, I want
Yeah.
it to tell me what I'm doing.
the goal there.
Yeah. Well,
That's what it flows.
I think we're gonna have to keep ourselves to a checklist of some sort too. I mean, as we're doing this, somebody, keeps a separate list or something that says these are the following things so that we don't have to go.
See that?
Well, there is an implementation table at the back of the plan, and so whatever language gets included in the objective will then be forwarded into the implementation table, and I believe there's a time frame associated with it as
So,
well.
everyone else is okay if it just says adopt?
We adopt
Well-
a certain date, or is that just,
No,
that puts us,
then you're on the treadmill.
In theory, is in conjunction with the LDC in order to figure out what it is we're trying to get them to do.
Well, we can add the words
Or-
LDC too.
Or if any of those other people that are negatively impacted if we let this lapse are using this document to see what we meant, somehow they should also get the message that we either have something or we don't have something, or we've committed to something.
Yeah, so to clarify, talking about and describing the river corridor so that you're consistent with state statute sets the stage and the values for the community.
Yeah.
And so when they read this and they see the action adopt the river corridor, that is being kind of proactive and allows the community and the public to see what is going on. And then the following implementation action is when the planning commission opens up the land development code and revises your flood regulations to reference the river corridor and to regulate to the river corridor area based on the map and what the Department of Environmental Conservation says the river corridor is.
Yeah, I don't think it should be too firm, because by the time we get around to the LDC, the DEC may have changed some of the requirements.
It's still,
That's what I was
the
saying.
goal for us is to comply
It's only a
with
year from now
something.
that we have to work on the LDC.
It doesn't matter, as long as the idea is that we're complying. I wanna be in compliance, and I wanna help people figure out how to do that, whether to go see something else, or whether we get the proper language in there. I'm trying to comply with, not consider or adopt, I wanna,
Yeah.
Well, I also have like a stupid question kind of deal, but if we have, so the language that was put in here about the river corridors is the requirement for the statutory requirement, so we have to write this language, but implementing, what is implementing the overlay get us, I guess, from a.
So that's where the higher match rate comes in. So currently, because you do have flood regulations in your land development code, I think it's 200 feet from the
Yeah.
floodplain,
Yep.
Yep.
that is granted you interim status. And so what that means is that if there is a flood event, the village is match rate. So there's a financial benefit. That status is interim. At some point, the state will require, or, you know, that status will expire.
Mhm.
And at that point, to maintain that higher match rate, you'll need to have the river corridor in your flood regulations, in your land development code. So the implementation is revising the land development code to regulate to the river corridor. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the goal behind it is you're still trying to protect your natural resources to the greatest extent possible, so whether there's a match or there isn't a match
Right.
or a incentive, we have our own incentives to maintain our waterways and our, you know, all the rest of that.
Right, and keep, you know, public and private infrastructure and property out of, you know, harm's way of potential floods.
Yeah.
And is there a map that shows, trying to think of how to say it, if we change the current 200 feet to the
The river
proposed-
corridor.
Yeah, to the river corridor, is there a, you know, what is the implications of that in regards to property and stuff that we
Yep,
currently?
really good question. So the map. Okay, so.
I know.
Is this one?
Okay, so
This is our
the,
current version.
Yeah.
so you have the current version in front
Yep.
of you, and then this is the new version.
A lot of, you know,
No,
development and developed areas
No.
now, but.
we won't.
Okay.
Okay, and so this is the river, this area in brown is the river corridor. And then if you look on page, or let me get you the section, because we did do an analysis which tells you how many structures, so it's, section 4.5, 1, 2, 3, fourth bullet. As of 2019, based on the latest river corridor, there are 10 okay, 10 structures are
Page
in the-
45.
No, 7.
Page 45.
Where
Oh.
4.5 starts.
Oh, I don't know that we did.
Oh, the
4.5.
pages are all messed up.
Okay, 4.5,
Maybe 46 by
Oh,
the time you
okay.
get there.
Yeah, it's page 46 in my document.
6.2?
Fine.
And it's 4.5, fourth bullet down, talks about the number of structures that are in the river corridor. So 28 structures are within the river corridor. 7 structures are in both the river corridor and the special flood hazard area. There's 24 road segments in the river corridor. That gives you extent of, public and private property that's in the corridor. And if you wanted to do some comparison, we have from our office, Pam Brangen made a map viewer where you can take a look at the river corridor dynamically and online and zoom in and zoom out and see
It's very cool.
Yeah.
see the changes and how they affect certain structures.
I would say it's really not even gonna impact because you know, putting it in the LDC, we don't have any development in those areas.
Well, interestingly, when we had to
actually,
look
there's-
at expanding 81 Main Street, that was significant
Oh.
because the floodplain was right there.
I was not in favor of expanding.
And road rescue is right in the floodplain.
Oh, are they? Okay.
Yeah, so we had to do a lot of, detailed analysis to make sure that we weren't actually in the floodplain and it set some floor
Gotcha.
elevation and so forth.
So the area in pink is the
Great.
is the river corridor, and then the area in red is an approximate model of your current 200-foot setback from the floodplain, and it's from 2015. So if that has changed since 2015, this may not be that accurate, but it shows you, and on top still shows you how the area has changed.
And the mapping itself is done by the Army Corps of Engineers or somebody that has all of this
Yeah, the floodplain is done by FEMA.
by FEMA.
The river corridor delineation, that's done by Department of Environmental Conservation, and it considers fluvial erosion. So I'm not that intimately involved in how it's done. It does take into consideration the dynamic state of the river, and changes the river may have during flooding events, and considers erosion impacts. There's a lot of assessment literature on it that I can direct you to.
And where do we have specific language about what is allowed to happen in any of those limits?
So
in
that
here
is,
or the LDC?
no,
I'm just curious
That
because
should be in the LDC.
the state has provided river corridor bylaw language that I can share with you.
I know some municipalities basically say you can't do anything in there ever for any reason,
Yeah.
goodbye. And that doesn't always seem like it has common sense associated with it. So I'm just, wherever that language is, I think we should sort of take a look at it
Okay.
when the time comes.
Yeah, I will send you that model bylaw language as a follow-up.
All right. So could you get to this map as a link inside the suggested language somehow?
Yes, there is a reference there might be a reference in the plan itself, but I will send this PowerPoint presentation to Robin with these hyperlinks, and then he can send it to you. So,
Well,
on this.
are they, is it going to end up in our comprehensive plan?
It could, that's up to you, it could end up there. The map showing the river corridor will be in the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, when you get a link on a piece of paper,
Yeah.
it's not something you
use
can
it.
click on.
No.
Maybe
No,
you
but-
might be able to do it with your camera, I don't know.
Our comprehensive plan will be online.
Yes, that's my
Yes.
And
point.
then
Right.
the link will work, but
Yeah,
it's, I'm just trying to still sort out what are we have in it versus what are we reviewing so that we have some discretion over it's in or it's not in, and why would it be a good thing? That's
Yeah.
just help us with that piece there, and you can tell us, some communities have, some communities don't, this is what you're supposed to do,
So the river corridor language that I've proposed is what you are required to do. If you wanted to get to the river corridor map, later this evening, if you go to our website and click on GIS, there's a link to the river corridor
yeah,
map,
the website's great for that sort of stuff.
as well.
Yeah, again, since we don't really, would you consider that we have a lot of it in our community, or we don't really have much? We have the two streams, right? I'm just thinking that if for some reason, one of the properties that is impacted by this could benefit from something.
Can we put a snapshot of some sort? I don't know if that would even work,
I
but,
don't
you know,
know.
into the, like in that section that talks about the 24 and blah, blah, you know. I don't know how that would even, if we could, like it would.
So are you talking about saying like, currently with the floodplain regulations, X number of structures are impacted, and then going forward in the river corridor area, there's, what was it, 24, 28 structures?
Yeah.
So are you asking for the difference between floodplain and river corridor? Or the buffer between the floodplain and the river corridor?
I think it's more important to see, I don't know, I still look at this and I guess I don't, almost like a list would be nice.
A list
Of
of,
like the areas that are impacted, that we could incorporate into here.
Yeah, and earlier there were symbols, residential.
So let me ask you
Yeah,
a
so
different
that's
way.
this
And this is
static.
mostly for us in our deliberative portion, not in our planning portion. I can understand that we're just trying to say, hey, we want to comply with the state regulations and here's and so forth. But in our deliberative side, let's say somebody shows up and they're in one of those zones and they propose something, what's the flag? How do we know that? How do they know
Right.
that?
Here, this map.
That's what I'm saying, like,
Well, when they
if you,
submit their application to you guys and
You guys
staff, do you check it against the floodplain thing and all the other overlays and everything else
We
that
do.
might be?
Yeah.
but we could, so what I was saying was we could maybe even include, and I don't know if it's easy to do or not, but, you know, say the following addresses are in the river corridor and not necessarily, not bit by bit,
There's
but,
only
you know,
28
maybe.
of them.
Yeah, I'm not
One of
sure
those
calling
28
out someone's
comes in, it ought to
address
be
is
a
the
big
best
red
thing.
flag,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I'm not sure calling someone's address, that's the best thing.
Well,
to do.
maybe even
It's called
streets
plan.
at that point. I mean, it's just something like would flag it like, oh my gosh, this is on demo, we better look at this.
It doesn't, it doesn't have to be in the document. We're all just wondering how that process works. Right?
Well, they're gonna know that they're in a floodplain. This is
They
not.
might not know. They don't always know.
No, people don't always do their due diligence to find out.
Don't refinance.
You'd be surprised though, I mean, I just wanna put a porch on, I'm just trying to add a swimming
Yeah.
pool, or, you know, they don't
Well,
necessarily.
Well, I'm
covered,
not saying we have to put 24 Densmore, but I mean, can we drill it down for us? So that we can
It's.
Densmore.
We need the
you know.
information when it's appropriate.
yeah, when
We're
when
looking for
something comes
staff
in.
to help us figure that
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
I mean,
don't
and
wanna-
and that'll be part of the land development regulation, but I get what you're saying. I think we need definition or some more descriptive language, what it means to relate to the river corridor boundary.
Because, you know, as Andy knows, some people do build things without getting permits.
So I will
I know all those
update,
P-words, I'll have to come down.
I can update that section with that enhanced language, and I will send you the model bylaw so you can get a sense on to what degree regulation in the, you know, to what degree of regulation is needed in the river
Alright.
corridor.
So, Robin, you should be taking notes on the two things that we've heard so far that are going to come up
Just
in
in the
our
minutes?
list of things that we want to deal with in the LDC.
Yeah, it's,
Right.
yeah, I think this is a decent start because you can look and see that's a residential structure, that's, it's in this area, it's in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Decent start.
Definite improvement over the last one.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay, so we can move off of water quality and focus our attention to, I guess it's still section 43, but where it starts to talk about significant wildlife habitat and forest integrity. So again, this is another proposed edit based on state statute. The state adopted Act 171. It's the Forest Integrity Act. And so essentially it calls for the protection of forest blocks. As a starting point, define the agency of. They've completed a statewide assessment which ranks areas of the village for economic or ecological importance. Ecological importance. And the language proposed here says that Essex Junction will continue to protect these areas as studied and mapped rather than, so this is a decision point, so let me put, okay.
What section are we talking about?
So we're looking at page 42. So it's page 42, section 43, where we're talking about forest integrity. So essentially the state has a conservation design assessment, and it ranks areas within the village as highest priority at the landscape level. So those are sort of features on the landscape like surface waters, riparian areas, wildlife corridors, and then also ranks areas for its ecological importance for maintaining the biodiversity of different species. And so the statute requires municipal plans to talk about forest integrity and ways that forest integrity is going to be maintained and protected. So, similar to River Corridor, it's having this language in the town plan sets the stage and the community values for maintaining these resources. Currently, in the 2014 comprehensive plan, contiguous habitat units are referred to from the 2008 open space plan. And so the village has a choice to continue to use those areas versus the conservation design areas. So the recommendation here is to take a look at map 1 in the map 1 for the 2019 village plan versus the natural resources map, and look at the contiguous habitat units. The contiguous habitat units, I think that was developed and studied by Arrowwood. There was a specific open space plan for the town and the village. Vermont Conservation Design data is, a statewide data set. So the choice is, deciding which area best represents the forested wildlife habitat areas in the village and how the village going forward will plan for protecting these areas.
It doesn't look like there's much on that contiguous habitat in the current map.
And I can bring that one up on
The
this
continuous habitat seems to be
green.
the Wickham Farms
Yeah.
area
Right.
up there around the fairgrounds.
So those areas are all of the 2008. Those are on this plan. I don't even know what it is, honestly.
That most of the village is
So that is how that's the data. That's the GIS data that maps primary agricultural
Used to be
soils.
primary agriculture.
My house is on 40 feet of sand. How could that possibly be prime ag soil?
Because it wasn't bare sand, it was
I
topsoil.
can't even
sand.
grow grass on it. I'm just.
That's your
I-
job.
Your land's been really abused up there
Just
now.
blank out John's little corner up there, just put sand there and the
I
rest of
know,
it.
I have a pet peeve on prime ag soil in, I mean, I just don't understand how they can fly up.
Well, here's the question. Used to be prime ag soil.
It's a
Could be
huge
again.
deal when Act 250 gets a hold of it.
I know. Certainly, there's nothing in the village center that's prime ag soil.
Well, look at the map, it says
It
it
is.
is. It says the whole thing is.
Yeah.
5 corners is on prime ag soil.
You know, you dig behind Road Rescue, you'll find the foundation for an old car wash. You won't find one
Just-
of ag soil.
Just saying, I don't know how we could possibly accept the designation, but I don't know what we can do about it either.
Does that have to be on there?
Um,
Is that part of the requirement for this particular section?
I will get back to you on that.
Okay.
And
There-
when was the last time that kind of thing was updated? Like, how can they say that, the village of Essex Junction has been built for mostly a long time? My understanding of prime ag soil meant that it had to be open enough that if you wanted to turn it into a food source again, you could. And there's no way that would really work here.
Or is it going by the soil type?
It is going by the soil.
It's going by
Mhm.
soil type,
That's
so
it.
even under that asphalt, there's still that soil type underneath.
Well, it's part of what's
Some
underneath.
of it, yes.
You certainly couldn't turn a combine harvester around anywhere here.
Right. So, anyway, that's
I think
part
it's
of
what
my
it used to
pet-
be, not what it is now.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I will get back to you on ways to address this.
There's no color referring to the darker brown on the bottom left there. The color coordination
Well,
That's where the primary agricultural soils.
should be. And the rest of
Well,
it's,
it is with the high priority data.
See, it doesn't tell me what the dark brown.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard to,
It's hard to read it. Yeah.
Right, it's because there's a transparency on the layer,
Mm.
and so, there's not a symbol on the legend that reflects the overlay. Ian McCart didn't address that.
No, Ian McClark wasn't here. But you'll see a pattern developing here, as John will probably bring up Act 250 quite often during this process.
well, our
Slow
goal
and
is to
nuts.
be helpful to people.
Yes.
As they try to
Yeah.
figure out what we're doing. And
Absolutely.
I'm not sure I'm helped by the
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
graphics here.
you brought up a good point about the definition of primary agricultural soils. I mean, if you look at the definition in state statute, it talks in terms of, if it's in an area that's not accessible to other areas, it doesn't contribute to the high importance of agricultural uses, then it's not. And so, by the purest sense, the agricultural soils that are mapped here in the village don't meet that definition.
No.
And I don't believe that that's been talked about in the comprehensive plan previously. Like I said, I can do some work to figure out how to explain
Absolutely.
the appropriateness of agricultural soils in the village. Does that,
And to any extent that that designation would impact somebody's development,
I mean,
it should just be cleared. It just struck me, we should be clearing something up here, but.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a really good idea.
right, I mean, from the state or the village, no, the village isn't regulating primary agricultural soils, but Act 250 is.
Mhm.
I,
Go ahead.
I'll keep my personal opinion. All right,
So the consideration is between, back to the forest integrity, is continue to talk about, forest habitat in the village based on the contiguous habitat units in the open space plan, or look at the Vermont Conservation Design Assessment. one of them needs to be mentioned, so that the village is planning for the protection of these resources.
Well, the state stuff is, I mean, I think the thing that strikes me is I don't know why we would even be referencing some 2008 plan.
No.
So it seems,
10 years old already.
it's pretty out of date,
Yeah.
so.
So this was, this is map 1 in the previous, or in the current plan. And the contiguous habitat units are here. So this pink hatched area, and here, and here. Okay, and then if we look at the proposed map 1, you know, the area is more extensive.
Right.
And, you know, you would need to, you know, similar to rivers, have a conversation about, you know, the regulation or the policy surrounding these areas.
Yeah, I wanna see what the endangered wildlife species is at Steve's house as well.
I was just wondering, what
Yeah,
is it near
what's
my
up?
house? That's,
It is your house.
I know.
It's
right on.
you.
Is it me?
Can go back
You
to
can't
it?
mow your grass anymore, by the way, there's,
No, he's gonna have.
It's a bullseye.
There it is,
on my house.
the green hatch circle, that's Steve's house.
and
What,
what's,
is it Grove Street? Or is it
No,
The
Lincoln
one
Street.
with Dead
Lincoln
Sun?
Street?
That's interesting. Is that where the bobcat lives?
Well, maybe that's where the bobcat
be
came
right.
from.
That's what I just said.
The rare, threatened, endangered species
Lincoln
over there.
He was hanging at my house and they came to yours.
natural.
I can't
It's
even
a
get,
statewide layer, so, I mean,
I can't even get the guy to plant wildflowers, but there's an endangered
Rare,
species.
threatened, endangered species.
it, yeah, I can
That's-
identify what species is there. I can't do it now, but I can get back to you on that.
He-
We're way in the weeds already.
Yeah.
Let's move
It's
on.
the Shaw species.
I was just gonna say. Does this translate to an objective that we need to, again, one of these things that we need to update
She
the
said we had a
LDs?
choice between something, I guess I would be in favor of adopting the state language rather than
Yeah,
Agreed.
2008 something or
yeah,
other.
well, that's
Agreed.
good, that's good.
Okay.
But does that mean that we have to update the LDC somehow too?
Eventually.
Well, we could do it as soon
Do we
as
need-
they adopt this, so.
Do we
that's
need
why-
another objective? That's it, implement. Or,
Implementation that related to forest integrity is ensure protection of the village's either contiguous habitat units or high priority forest blocks. Sounds like we're going with high priority forest blocks, by inventorying the resources, determining their
Here.
current level of protection. So that is, it's objective. The formatting is.
Yeah.
Yeah, was it 4.4?
It's 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
4.5.
So do we really have any high priority forest blocks?
I believe so. Yeah, and then so, to answer your question, Amber, and then establish standards for protection of them in the land development code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
You know, so that's the framework for updating the land development code. I also share some language with you on what level of protection that is.
Okay.
Or, you know, so.
That works.
Well, so the one that's along the left edge there, is that down by the Whitcomb Farm? So,
Yes.
Yeah.
but let's just take, for example, I mean, we keep thinking about the implementation side of this and so they came in, wanted to board, I don't know if they came in or not, but they put a bunch of a solar farm down there, right? So that wouldn't have gone in the forest piece, that would have gone on prime ag soil or some kind of, right, on the fields. They didn't, they were already using them for other crops, now they have a solar crop. So does any of the detail that you're talking about here, would that come into play when somebody came in with a project like that and said, I wanna put a solar panel farm in this particular site, we would go back to our protection of things and find out that it's good, bad, or not acceptable?
We would be
That
making
wouldn't
that,
come-
we
that
would
wouldn't-
make, we would be making that call.
Well, not now, but when you go to enhanced energy planning, I mean, you would provide comments, and currently the state is, the state considers primary agricultural soils for renewable energy generation as a possible constraint, so some mitigation would need to happen. So whether that's ensuring that the agriculture is not impacted or paying to engage and that get worked out at a permanent level.
With the state, not with.
Right, with the
Right.
state.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I think it is CBG.
So do you have enough input from us on which direction we wanted to go with the language on this choice?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. Are we at, how are we doing with time?
We're a bit slow.
We're a bit slow.
It's 7:15.
Okay, I mean, I think that's really the extent of the changes. You know, we are focusing on forest integrity and flood resilience.
Right.
And I will follow up with you, the things that I said I would follow you on. I think that concludes the presentation. Just in terms of next steps, send me what planned comments you have, if you have comments, you know, as of today,
Yeah,
based
send them
on,
to me, Terry, and Melanie.
yeah. Review the maps, this is the link to the FTP site. We already talked about meeting with the town of Essex on energy planning, March 21st, that's potential in process.
Push that spring.
Next, next meeting, we're gonna focus on energy, land use, transportation, as well as the other items that we talked about today, so that's, just so that we're all clear. I'm following up with you on, model filing, on forest integrity, river corridors, as well as, identifying how to deal with the appropriateness of primary agricultural, or the description of primary
I think
agricultural
that's a big one.
soils in the village.
Right.
And I will send this PowerPoint presentation to Robin, share with you guys, all the links are live, so you can
Thank you.
explore the maps and that.
I have two questions. Dustin, do you have any words of wisdom or comment for us as topics that we've talked about maybe also impact our town information at some point, or contiguous to the town borders in some cases?
In grand scope, no, but specifically related to the we were talking about wildlife habitat, use the term, contiguous space frequently, and I think there's a line in here in this copy that I think is even more critical to that than just contiguous open space or wildlife space, which is the connected habitats. Because we've had presentations from
Jens Hilka from DEC, yes.
Specifically, and wildlife connectivity is as important as having just contiguous space. So
Yeah.
I was very nice, it was good to see this, and I didn't quite understand whether or not this was language that would be coming out or staying in. But I think having some emphasis on connectivity between the habitats, especially since the habitats are not large in the village. They're various pieces, but
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, connectivity is a huge part of the forest integrity assessment, so thank you for mentioning that. The language that is being added is in the red, I hope that anything about connectivity wasn't deleted, but I will check on that. And the Vermont Conservation Design data that was shown on map 1 does include connectivity in it as well, but I hear it might need to be stressed
I
further
just
or
think this-
emphasized on the map.
This is a plan, is what people look for the overview. You mentioned it
Yeah.
earlier, this is an overview of what your community is looking for, not necessarily the detailed,
Right.
granular
Mhm.
pieces. So, knowing that you're looking for connectivity is sufficient at the plan level.
I want to know if anybody else has comments on the material or sections that were not part of the presentation, but are things that we've been looking at.
Well, one comment I would make is that the education part needs to be totally reworked because we have a new school district that now exists, and so references to, all that needs to be rewritten. And there's a few other sections that need to be totally rewritten. We need to decide if there's, I have a hard time keeping things in here that are done or have changed, like the farmer's market being disbanded.
But that's obviously gonna come out, yeah.
So I made comments, Molly.
Okay.
So if you- yeah,
Them.
there's like personal changes to be,
Yeah.
updated, and on and on and on. So I guess that's my biggie, is that would be my concern. I realize we're doing a, comprehensive plan light, but I can't leave anything
No,
in here that's
see,
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of those little tidbits.
There
like
There's a lot of house-
There's a lot of housekeeping.
Lot of
Yep.
housekeeping.
Housekeeping,
Yes.
house cleaning.
Yep.
So,
We're not cleaning anybody's house.
the one thing I will say is that when this was printed, and I'm thinking it's probably printing, there's a lot of change of fonts and.
Yeah.
And
Pages,
like visually
numbers.
silly thing, I'm kind of going, that's all gotta be because of being transferred from there to print or something or other. So I'm not sure how those, at this point in time, I'm tolerating them,
Okay,
but I've circled most of them,
yeah,
and.
yeah, the formatting is
I agree with you.
But,
But it won't be when we get to the end.
no, when we get down to the end,
No.
this should be, the one thing I will say is that,
No,
I'm
no.
having a tough time with Global Foundries,
Mm-hmm.
and it says IBM, formerly IBM. Global Foundries is not formerly IBM, they may be on the former IBM site.
Yeah.
Okay, but they are not formerly IBM, they are a wholly different company. Although IBM still owns land over there, so, especially across from ADL, which is referred to in the light industrial piece. So somehow that language needs to be, that it doesn't make that assumption that it's one company that was assumed by another. And I'm not sure how to wordsmith that.
right. I mean, the quickest way you see to do that is IBM was global, but
Right.
it's not,
Or
that's
just,
not
or
correct.
just, just
Yeah.
not even mention that it was formerly IBM and just,
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Well, there's
Just leave
this,
it Global
there
Foundries.
is a line in there that says that Global Foundries
does,
acquired
yes.
IBM.
right.
Yep.
So, I can take another look at that section and try and fix
I'll
it.
loan you my book.
Yeah,
Um,
Yeah, I've got a bunch of that little nitpicky
put your
stuff,
name on it,
too.
cause it sounds like you want it back.
yeah, I like it back.
Or I'll put your name on it.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking a look at it and making some red line comments, that's really helpful.
Because there's little things that.
Well, it's, yes, it's.
Thank you.
it's- You
Okay.
make these assumptions that we're going to be doing this grammatically, all that other fun stuff.
Well said by the unified manager and the deputy town manager, a little book called Eats, Shoots, and Leaves.
Yes.
And I gave it to them. I read it years ago when it came out, and I gave it to them last week. Just,
Tuition saves lives.
Any other comments on the municipal comprehensive plan at this point from you guys? All right, moving on, any other, planning commission items?
We're still working through the 7 Park Terrace property. It's close, but it's not quite there. Hopefully it will be soon. I did get the village engineer's comments back on 3 Maple Street. It's just the one that's up. And it's where the
Oh,
showing machine,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
and it looks like Genesee and Wyoming and NEC are going to start doing the real crossing on the Amtrak line April this year.
wow.
Believe it when we see
So that's
it.
very good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know there's comments in that.
Their consulting engineers are no longer working for them. Patrick Engineering out of Boston, no longer part of the picture.
Good.
Okay.
Any other news, comments?
Trying to think, as soon as I leave the building, I'll think of something I should have said.
What's going on with 3 Maple Street though?
It's going to be a 4-story building with apartments and retail, commercial, and the entry level.
Pending approval by the planning commission.
Yes.
It's a cute.
The property at the corner, west corner of Park Terrace and Park Street sold last week.
Harbor
What?
Terrace and Park Street?
Formerly owned by,
Mr. Handy.
yeah, okay,
Wait, but what's there now?
is that faux?
It's,
Yeah.
Is it Fodang?
yes, it's Fudang. So, that will be coming in, I have seen an elevation, they've changed the elevation. And,
Wasn't that wasn't part of his master plan?
It was part of his
It was.
master
Part of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah,
and if you look at the lime green post that holds the sign up for the restaurant,
okay.
I asked them not to start their building until curbside of that lime green post. To give us much wider. They said they would in to the back of the property to park. It gets very tight at the back, but if that didn't cause them a problem, they would give us that wide sidewalk.
So, does this impact Park Terrace? Is there something on the edge, on the southerly side of Park Terrace? Or is it the next property down?
No, it's that property, that's why it's at Southwest Corner of Park Terrace.
If I have to hear about how narrow Park Terrace is.
They want to widen
Ever.
Park Terrace for the depth of their building to get cars in and out.
Beautiful.
We should be,
That would be awesome.
basically.
Which means he's given us a piece of his property for a street.
Encouraging that in
Yeah.
any way we can,
Mhm.
yeah.
So the site plan looks quite good at the minute. It's just a sketch,
Mhm.
a piece of yellow trace, but it will come back. And I think it'll look pretty good. Yes.
Corner.
All set?
Are we allowed to know to who?
You are if you go to the town offices and look.
Anything else? I will be glad to hear a motion to adjourn then.
It's my boy.
Motion to adjourn. Thanks.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. There's no opposed. Thank you.
Done.
Somewhere, I can't remember.